Hey friends, welcome back to the Above Board podcast. And today I'm very excited because we have a returning guest to the show and a good friend of mine, Mr. Patrick Sirmeyer. He is the CEO of Luxus Plus, which is a premier multi-vertical recruitment firm based here in Orlando, Florida. He's also the co-founder of Privy, which is a career coaching platform for employers as well as employees. And he was on episode 23 with us, which, like, Patrick, I don't know what episode number this will be, but it's going to be right around 123. So like almost 100 episodes later, we got you back, man. So I'm excited. What's going on?
Man, well, first, I feel as though you should write the copy for my LinkedIn and our website, because that was a really good intro.
Well, I stole it from your LinkedIn, so.
Okay. And I'm really happy. This would be my first time being a returning guest on anyone's podcast. So thankfully, we're good friends. Annie thought enough of me to come back. Everyone else I've ever done a podcast for never asked me back. So the content must not be that good, but I'm going to bring my A game today. And I love the conversation we're going to talk about, because you and I relate quite often in our live conversations, our text conversations related to the topic of remote work and how do we handle life around that. So this is actually a passion topic for me, I have to say, because it's something that I took on in 2019. I think everyone else would say they had to adjust because of COVID. I tried to be a pioneer before that. And I will tell you that I got exposed for not being ready for remote work as a small business owner and manager. But today we're thriving, but we'll get into that.
Well, yeah, let's start there, because if for the folks that have been generous enough to be avid listeners to our show and can go back 100 episodes and say, like, yes, I remember Patrick. We talked about the tagline was disconnecting to find awareness. So it was this whole idea of the sentient life, and that was actually on the heels of COVID, where you went on this journey with your wife Anna and your kids and your dogs even. Yeah, for a year to travel the United States and work remote. And I think that journey was really cool. So I'm going to have some follow-up questions about that now that we're a couple of years separated from when we did that podcast. But let's maybe start with, okay, like COVID's happening, the world's changing in real time, and we're having to adjust as business owners and as employees of companies. What did that look like for you guys specifically?
It's a really good question. I'll take you back even about 6 to 8 months prior to that. So the short version is this. I've always worked in an office in my industry of recruiting and staffing. It's been traditional. And if you ask any other traditional company in my industry, every owner manager will say, you've got to have one in the office, because it's really a learn through mentorship and osmosis type business. They seem to think they didn't believe that it could be done remote or it could be done hybrid. And you do what you've always done. So start a new business 2018. I go get a new office space, about 4,000 square feet. We build it out. We get all the employees up and running. And of course, it's a new business like anything else. But almost immediately when I got the office space, I regretted it, because I knew there was this move towards hybrid work and remote work. I myself love the flexibility. I don't mind admitting, as a small business owner, there's a level of purgatory that you live in a little bit, because you're playing both sides. You're producer, employee, and also manager, and making executive decisions at the same time. You have to be available for everyone. Perfect example, I'd constantly come into the office with this idea that I've got these plans of things I'm going to do. I wake up in a good mood. I'm kind of attacking my day, they talk about, where you're like owning it. And then I get to the office, and almost within the first hour and a half, 2 hours, it's like fire after fire after fire starts hitting you. And when the day's over, I haven't done anything for myself. And I feel as though I've just been really available putting out fires as opposed to accomplishing. So you do enough of that for a period of time, and you just start to lose your edge. That's where I was. So I thought, let me just move this to remote work, because I'm going to be happy. It was selfish. And although a wonderful decision to make, one of the things I learned was did not have the staff that wanted remote work, first of all. And so we ended up turning over like 80% of our staff within about 4 months. They all went out.
That's interesting, because, well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I feel like most people in today's working environment would prefer at least flexibility, or maybe just complete remote work. Your staff was not thrilled with that change?
You're filtering it through a dad brain, a husband brain, someone with a lot of responsibilities brain, and so was I. I traditionally would hire people out of college. They're in their early 20s. They've got their first apartment. They want to go socialize. They want to go to the office. They want to go to the gym afterwards. They want to go to the bars, the restaurants. They need that, because they don't want to go back to their 1-bedroom apartment with white walls and no furniture. They want to go and like socialize and spend all this time with people. So most of the staff you can separate it between those who had children and those who did not, or those who were married, those did not. And so they went on and found new jobs. and I had to reestablish who my ideal profile of a person was to work for our company. And then the second part where I learned my lesson was that we did not have the proper tools for training, education, and systematic communication for someone who works remote. Good example, today we use a lot of video library trainings that have grown to be very popular, and we have them on various topics, and we're trying to figure out which ones are process oriented, and then we have to figure out which things need to be, maybe more of a mentorship level conversation, because now that we're all remote, we've been doing it for years, we've started to figure out all those tendencies that make a difference.
Okay. And so just kind of going back with the timeline for a second. So this happened, did you say like 6 to 9 months before COVID hit is when you started making this transition?
We had lockdown in March of 2020.
Yeah.
I transitioned everyone in July of 2019.
Gosh, you're just a good fortune teller. Like you just knew this was coming and we needed to do it. So, okay. So then COVID happens and I'll use myself as an example. So my industry is very old. I mean, this is the best way I could describe it. Like we have a lot of, the average advisor at the time was probably like 58 to 60 years old. And so things were done pen and paper, things were done on handshakes in person. That's the world we lived in. And we started making a migration to being more virtual in 2018. So like similar to you, not out of necessity like the rest of the world did in 2020, but generally out of self-interest of like, hey, this is a little more efficient. And ours was like a hybrid situation. So we would go into the office when we had client meetings. And now fast forward to 2024, that's still what we do with our clients. So maybe for you, like let's fast forward to now. You had 80% turnover. You've got almost virtually an entirely new staff versus what it looked like in probably 2019. Then at that point, how do things flow now? Like give us a feel for. And I have a bunch of follow-up questions there, but just give me kind of a high-level view of working remote today.
Well, I'll say this. First, to your point of your industry being old in its traditional ways of doing business, the line of business I'm in is also heavy relationship development and consulting. That's just, we're in the people business is what I do. So for that reason, we cannot replace the relationship through a video like, we've gotten used to. But a couple things happened. One was that it took time. I think now everybody is used to the idea that we've become accustomed to some form of virtual work. So it's not a taboo topic and it's not new. So there's comfort even with those of older ages that are more traditional. But then secondarily, I'll do some traveling from time to time, or someone in our company will, and we'll go to a city and spend some face-to-face time with our clients and people that we're working with. So we still have that. We just don't have it nearly as often, and we just don't frequently, go to these offices as much as we used to. But I think the biggest transition was one, everyone just got used to the topic. So now we're comfortable in it when it comes to like working remote. Perfect example. Think about this. How many times in May of 2020 did you spend 15 minutes helping someone figure out how to log into Zoom?
Oh, of course. That was my full-time job. Yeah.
And that was like, if you want to, that could be purgatory for me, is like trying to work someone through technology related problems when you just want to get to the relationship. Whereas today, I would say it's less than 5% of the people that hop on and are having that issue. Another thing, and again, these are like technology tools. We've had to adopt and look for things that we can use. The new buzzword everyone's using right now is AI. Everything's got an AI component to it. But even in like some of our virtual meetings, we have a plug-in product called Tactic that we use. That's an AI note taker. And now we get to spend more time just looking at the people, because I spent so much of my time typing as they're talking. I'm taking notes, but like, how much am I actually looking at the individual I'm talking to through this camera? And now we get these follow-up notes from AI, and we can review them and see what we missed and what we need to actually follow up on. And now I feel as though that product alone has helped me do some better connections in this virtual world. So I'm thankful for the evolution that we've had in some technology, and I'm thankful for the adaptation. That was probably our biggest component outside of people who want to work remote. I can tell you right now, I've got a guy on my team he's got 2 girls who are in competitive sports. I know we're going to talk about that topic next, or on the next podcast, but they're competitive travel sports. He has to be done at about 4 p.m. every day. He's got to go out and coach. He travels to tournaments on the weekends. It's just, he needs that flexibility to work from home, and it works for him. And I'm very thankful that our model and his life mesh together.
I like that. I identify very much with, what you were saying, where it took a little bit of time, I think, for people or for society to like normalize working from home. Because prior to 2020, that was something that Matt and I were working towards and you should have seen the looks of people within our industry when we would tell them like all of our documents are virtual. Like we don't actually have like a physical filing cabinet of client information. And they're like, huh? Like they didn't even understand how that worked. And we use Google Drive, that's what we use predominantly. We had to make some choices and like figure all that stuff out for ourselves. And I can remember feeling, I'm going to use the word shame. Like I can remember explaining to certain clients who, again, by that point, 2018, 2019, like you did things face to face. That's how you did business. And I can remember telling clients, like they'd call in the office and they'd hear a little background noise and they're like, "Are your kids at the office?" And I said, "No, I'm in my home office." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And there was this feeling of maybe this like illusion of we haven't arrived as a firm yet, because like I think people like to see, especially in my world, in the service industry, managing people's money. I've joked with you about this before, but like one of the reasons we have a physical presence in an office is because if you're like a multi-million-dollar client and you knock on our door and want to have a meeting, and I'm like, yeah, let's meet at the Panera Bread on Redbug in Tuscaloosa, you're going to be concerned. Like you want to come into a physical office. You want to feel that presence. You want to understand how they operate. You need that. And so we still have the office for that. But I can remember being sort of shameful with certain clients or folks where it's like, no, I'm working from home today. Whereas fast forward to now, it's so normal. And our clients, we have such a good community of folks we work with. So like our clients are genuinely happy for us. So like, so like the other day I was talking with someone like, so what's your day-to-day look like? And I said, well, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'm here. That's typically when I do client meetings in office. And then Monday, Tuesday, Friday, I work from home because I want to be able to go pick up my kids. Similar to your coworker, your colleague that ends the day at 4 and then goes and coaches his daughter's team. Like I want to be available in that way as well. And so it has... there's not many great things that have come of COVID, of course, a bunch of bad there, but like that's one of the, I think, good things. And ultimately it's caused us to have a conversation about it today because so many people do it. I mean, you were an early adopter to it. We were kind of going to this like half and half hybrid space, which in my industry, we were light years ahead of the rest of the folks in my world and financial services. But I'm going to switch topics for a second because you talked a little bit about your team. I understand that you had turnover. And I get it now. Like when you first told me that, I was like, that doesn't make sense. But I do get why you had turnover when you made this choice. But what do you guys try to do as a team to stay engaged? Because like there are days that go by where we have a team of 7. There are days that go by where I don't talk to someone on my team. And so I'll tell you about some of the things we do. But I'm curious, what do you guys do to try to stay engaged?
So a couple things. I'll say this because I mentioned earlier how moving to remote, I feel like I got exposed in like the processes and systems my business didn't have or were poor. So now today, a couple things is that we've got pulse check meetings on video with our team. For us, our cadence is twice a week, and that's the entire team gets on those. We have small group pulse check meetings every morning for like 15 minutes at a time, 15-minute increments. It's mostly game planning. It's reaffirming the day, game planning, making sure we know what we're doing. We go forward.
For context, sorry to interrupt. For context, how many people on the team?
So we have 9 total. That's be the big team meeting, and then we'll have breakouts between 2 and 3 people at a time. So that's pretty much how it works. And then from that, though, is like an example was my industry is very heavily predicated on activity. So because we do recruiting of potential candidates for jobs, a lot of times a traditional recruiting staffing owner, you would have brought someone in office and it's kind of like almost like a call center, maybe cubicle based. You're calling 100 people a day for job opportunities, emailing, texting, LinkedIn. You're doing anything you can to make contact with these people and talk to them about a job opportunity. And then you've got some steps you take within your like CRM database. But so what you would do is you'd measure everything on a daily basis based on just like how much activity, it was your output. And we realized, okay, well, if we're going to work in this remote fashion, we have to almost transition to be project-based. So we have to look at things as, hey, we need you by the end of the week to have accomplished these things. And it's a more mature decision-making process of like what you're looking to accomplish versus how much activity you put in. Again, I keep mentioning technology, but thankfully we have new tools. There's called like seeing drip campaign emails. We've got some things now that will automate some of that for us. I read this book years ago. It's called Procrastinate on Purpose. And I'll just give you the short version. The guy says you should evolve your decision making to basically have this filter in your head. For every task you have, you first ask if you can eliminate the task. Like, is it necessary? If it can't be eliminated, you find out if you can automate it. If you can't automate it, you find out if you can delegate it. If you can't delegate it, then that means you're the only person that can do it. And now you have to go dig in and do the task. And so my brain has this new automated filter where everything goes to basically through that waterfall. And now I start to do those things. So we've tried to take as much as we can off of our plate of our employees. That's not as the most effective thing to do, which really is just getting to the relationship with the person. And so as we've gone through those cadence meetings, we've figured out what our pulse is. You and I have talked a lot about the EOS program, and we've adopted that engineering operating system with Traction, the book. You were the one to turn me on to it. So we've evolved to offer that to our team. So it's taken us a few years to get on track. But between those things and our pulse checks, like, now everyone knows what to expect as opposed to being pulled in different directions on a regular basis.
One of my favorite things about this podcast is I selfishly, like, it's me, it's sort of my journey of getting to learn things. So I'm going to paraphrase this because I want to make sure I understood this right. So your filtering process is, can you eliminate it? Can you automate it? Delegate it? And then if you can't do those three things, then you got to do it. And that's the task that falls on you, right? Is that what I heard?
That's it.
I wanted to paraphrase that for people that heard you say that, because that I think that was really useful, and it's useful for me because like those are just things that I'm constantly thinking about. Like I look at my day and I'm like, I have I write down like the big three things I need to accomplish today. And I try to, those are my rocks. Those are my goals for the day, and everything else gets filled in. And as you know, interruptions happen, there's fires that have to be put out, kind of like what you shared earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really useful. And so as a team, you said you put some like productivity stuff together to help the team work. One of the things Megan and I were talking about in this regard was we were just talking about this yesterday. It's like, I forget how we phrased it. Now I'm stalling out because I can't remember. She phrased it so good, but it was just like this idea that you work remote and you obviously hope or assume like everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing at all times. And for us, like I have a confidence in our team of 7. Luckily, it's not large enough to be like, it's easy to kind of like collaborate with everybody at that level. It's not like we have 700 or even 7 people, but having it be project-based makes it so much easier because you don't have to really worry. You could just focus on the output, not worry like, is this person at their computer? Are they at their desk? Like the traditional 9 to 5 is like, you need to be at your desk. And if you're not at your desk, you're not productive. And you're throwing that out the window as we are, right? Is that a good way to say that?
It took me years to break the thought process that, like, perfect example, we are recording this midday. If any one of my employees right now are sitting by the pool getting a tan or whatever they're doing, I don't care. It just doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. Because in the end, they've matured in their mindset that by the day's over, there are some things they must have accomplished. Because for us to move forward as a team, we need that project, we'll call it, to be finished or their portion of what they're doing. Great. Now, since we're on that topic and we are mature about that decision-making process, I honestly don't care where you are right now. The other thing I've told our group is, we work remote. I don't physically care where you're working. Like if you call me and the video of a background is a beautiful ocean, and you're sitting on the balcony of like, some condo you rented or visiting, I'm excited for you. I'd rather see that than the walls and the windows, but in the end, we're focused on what are we outputting, what's the output, and are you happy in the process while you're doing it? And I'm thankful for that. But like, I try to tell them all the time, like, I hope you log in and I hope I see some cool background where you are, as long as you're getting your work done.
Yeah. Good gosh, man. I very much agree with that. Do you feel like that helps as a recruitment tool within your company? So I get the irony in that question. You guys do help people with recruiting, but as a recruitment tool now maybe it wasn't as advantageous in 2018 or 19, but what about now? I mean, I would imagine people would appreciate that flexibility and that mindset from the employer of their company.
They do, and I'll give you a thought. If you use 2020 as it wasn't January, but we'll just use it as an example to where we are today. Okay, we're now, I guess that we're technically in the fifth year. If you're going, actually, no, we're in the fourth year, I should say, of potential remote work. Many people should have now adapted really well, and you've gotten accustomed to it. Therefore, I can hire another person who's used to working remote, and they know what comes with it, and they're mature in their decision making of what the responsibility incurs. I did attempt last year. I hired another young guy who really wanted the job with us, and single, lived by himself, had a dog, and I still have a relationship with him today. And he really wanted to work remote, but he'd never done it. But he was so committed to it. And 6 months in, he called me and he felt so bad. And he says, "Man, I have to tell you, I hate working remote. I don't get to see anybody." And I was encouraging him all the time, "Man, go out there, go to the gym, do all this stuff." He's like, "I got to go out and see people right now in the current state I am in my life." And he decided to leave our company. But, we should know now in our fourth year who wants to work remote.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to our show. Are you looking for shorter daily episodes of Above Board delivered straight to your Amazon Alexa? Join CanterPath 365 and get our daily brief with market updates, financial news, and mini podcast snippets like from today. Sign up now at canterpath365.com and we'll see you there.
The other thing I noticed too, and this is just a scenario, I can think of this from any part of my life in which I was new, a novice, a rookie, is I like to really differentiate between self-discipline versus imposed discipline. And what I mean by that is we would love to all beat our chests and say we're disciplined people, we're self-disciplined. Okay, great. There are some areas in my life where I have motivation or inspiration and an experience, and I'm self-disciplined to do something. Okay. But there's a lot of parts of my life where I need imposed discipline. If I didn't have managers, coaches, trainers, anyone in my life, parents who had imposed discipline upon me for a period of time before I was mature, I wouldn't be in the place to be able to do the things I do today. So I think when a new person comes on board with our company, I tell them, "Hey, we're going to impose discipline on you and dictate the way you work for about 3 months, maybe a little longer, 6 if necessary. Once we've now done that, you are then going to be able to feel like the pace and the way we work. And I think you'll have the maturity to have the self-discipline to make your decisions for yourself." But I think that topic though is its own independent topic, even for remote work, so that people can get used to the idea. Does that make sense? No.
That's a really great point. Because I like the idea that probably after 3 to 6 months, you're looking at a situation where, okay, now it's project based. We're just looking at output. If you're doing that from the beach, or you're doing that at 2 a.m., like whatever, it doesn't matter how or when you do that, as long as you're getting it done. But there's this like warming up period so if someone's never fully worked remote, like the person that you mentioned that didn't work out, I can imagine that being hard because there is isolation. I mean, for me, I like it because we joked about this before the call. Like my kids are on the other side of that door and I can hear them, and hopefully the mic's not picking that up. But if they are, that's fine too. But like, I want to be able to walk out after this, spend a little bit of time with them. But for somebody like in that situation where they're single, it's their, them and their dog, and they yearn for that interaction. Unless you have that, community to go to like a coffee shop that or like somewhere that you're going to go work, you're probably not gonna, and maybe you will suffer from remote work. This is actually, I didn't think we'd take it that way in the context of this conversation, but the idea that people don't necessarily thrive in remote work, I think I enjoy, and this is just my opinion. I don't know that my whole team feels this way, but I think they do. I enjoy the flexibility of both. Like I like the option that I know I could today go to my office and 2 of my team members are there and I could work alongside them, not like disrupt them and like stop them from what they're doing, but just like be in that environment with someone else that like we're rowing in the same direction, we're working together. I know that I could do that. I also know today that I'm not going to because I've got some family commitments that I want to be able to do at 3:30 and 4 o'clock today. And I don't want to miss those things. So I'm not going to kill an hour drive time, 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back to do that. I think for me, it's like we had to find our cadence too. And I find that I like the flex. I like the flex thing. And something else I'm learning about myself, and I've shared this with you before, which again, thank you for coming on this podcast. I've joked for the listeners that like a lot of conversations Patrick and I have, we could just hit record and just like maybe probably turn it into a podcast. Not that we're like spitting that much wisdom, but they're just fun, engaging conversations, you know?
I appreciate that. I feel the same way.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know if you ever had this experience, and I'll use that imposed discipline for self-discipline, but when our children were younger, like toddler age, and if at the time I worked from home, or there's a time when Anna, actually, my wife, we worked for a company, we would try to get a babysitter, you know, to come watch the kids for a bit. We didn't have a very big home at that time. And, you know, so you hope they keep the kids busy while you're over here in this other room working. Well, what we noticed, the lesson we learned was that, okay, so you've hired someone to watch your children, but if your child can physically see mom in the other room, she assumes that mom's accessible. Like, you know, the child cannot register the idea that mom's not accessible. Like they still want mom. So selfishly, I have to tell you, and this is one of the things I've loved as a manager owner in remote work, is that when I had my office, I would do what most people do. You have your own private office. I had a desk out with the rest of the group too, but a private office, and you keep your door open. Let's close our meeting. Door open indicates, hey, if you need me, I'm available. Okay.
Yeah.
I often did that because I wanted to be seen as available. But as I mentioned about like putting out fires, that usually is a knock on the door. Hey boss, you got a minute? Or, hey, I got a question. And it's always a question, and it turns into a bigger question, another question. And there's some data, I wish I could remember it right now, I have to go look it up, about how long it takes you to get back in the zone mentally after you've been interrupted.
It's like 15 to 30 minutes at least. I've looked that up before. Yeah.
So you have that happening to me all day long. And these are the scenarios. And again, they're not major conversations. They made a difference to the 10 people that wanted to talk. But now it's just my whole day starting to slip away. You could feel that day slip away. So today in remote work, I could have closed my door. I could have made myself inaccessible. But in today's remote work with things like Calendly, making yourself available, unavailable, I use Microsoft Teams as my kind of communication tool. Or someone calls me and I can just hit deny. I don't feel like picking up at this moment. I just don't. I'm currently, in a do not disturb, like you talked about in your phone. You'll be on do not disturb. Well, what used to happen in our office was when they couldn't reach me, they would wait to make a decision or do something until I was accessible. That might be till tomorrow. And I don't want you to wait until tomorrow to make a decision, because I don't usually give people decisions to make that are going to be so detrimental to our company that we're going out of business. So it's like you can fail a little bit. But they didn't want to make a mistake. There was so much, I don't want to make a mistake. Well, now when you can't reach me, and by the way, you can't even go to someone's desk. You can't go to someone's office. If you can't get an answer, and it took us time to get to this point, the answer is, we need you to come to a conclusion for yourself. You've been trained. And if you don't, call back again and say, it's urgent. I have no idea. I'm underwater. But otherwise, try to come up with the best solution, and maybe even present it to us, and we'll tell you if you're right. But that for me gave me so much happiness, which was the idea that like now I had to impose some discipline upon them, which is you can't access me all the time. And I became a much happier person for it. And they grew at a faster rate because of it. And I'm very thankful for that. And that was one serendipity of remote work that I didn't think was going to happen.
That's probably pretty difficult for the business owner to implement those things, because like on one hand you want to be involved in the day-to-day of the company. You want to know some of these things. And if you're I don't know if you know what Enneagram type you are. I'm a type 3. That's like a thing we've been talking about on the podcast a lot, which is like a very goal oriented, like achievement oriented person. I find that my personality type kind of lends to like I want to be involved. I don't have the energy to be involved in everything, but I want to be. So I'm having to like almost train myself. And some of the imposed discipline that I've had to create, even just recently, like in the last couple of weeks, we started doing this again, is I have office hours on my calendar, internal office hours for the team, that it's like from 3 to 3:45 twice a week, I'm available. And then we're doing these at 9 a.m., these 7-minute meetings. Why 7 minutes? I don't know. It's an odd number, but it's meant to be very hyper specific of like, this is a very short meeting. Because if it's a 15-minute meeting, you're like, oh, we can make that a 20, 30-minute meeting. But like 7 minutes, like let's honor the 7-minute meeting. And that's something Haley and I have been doing a lot lately, where it's like, let's go through the big 3 things today. What happened overnight? Like what things do I need to respond to? And just like, these are quick hits. But like, it's like this intentionality of being available and trying to not, I think for me, it's that imposed discipline of like, stop inserting yourself in everything, John. Like, you don't need to be involved in every little aspect of it. Cause I could be, and I'd like to be. So I have a question or more of a comment, but do you practice anything now to help you just sort of delineate between family time and work at home time? Because you made that comment of where you're like, okay, we try to get a babysitter to help out, but they see us. So then like, especially when they're really little, they're not comprehending that. They just know you're home, like you said. And so mom and dad are home. And I asked because I heard someone, I wish I could remember who told me this. They put a sign on their door. Again, this is self-imposed discipline for themselves. They put a sign on their door that says like open or closed. And when they end their work day, they turn it to close, they hang it on their door. And it's like, I think they said it was red. So it's like kind of just sent that signal to like, don't go in there. And I thought, God, I need something like that for myself, because it's so easy to be like, oh, you know what? One more email came up. Let me pop in there. Like I checked something on my phone. I'm like, let me get back in my workstation. And you talked about the time it takes, when you get taken away from workflow and like the time it takes to get back into it. The same can be said on the family side. Like when I'm playing with my kids and having a good time, and then I check my phone and I get pulled into it, I come back in here in my office and I'm like, hey, Jackie, to be a minute. And like 35 minutes go by. And it's like a joke in our house. Like Jackie's like, okay, see you in an hour. Like she knows when I come back in here. So I like that idea of like putting a sign on your door. I'm curious if you guys do anything like that.
Well, I'm thinking about my day. So in the majority, I don't have a discipline around the majority. I can turn it off, with the exception of things you said for email. But it's something, as you said it, I started to think about this. I think I have been working through this thought process for so long that it's now like subconscious for me, which is that idea of, if you receive an email and you see it on your phone and you finish your workday and you look at the email, and you probably today, as for long as you've been working as a professional in your industry, you can determine, is this urgent, important, or both? Like your brain just kind of like reads it, and you can just make that quick decision. Oh, this is urgent. Is it urgent and important? Is it both? Is it neither? Whatever it might be. And does it need your attention right now? Right. So those are the ones. The other thing I would say is like, within that, like you have to make your decision. Am I going to go address this at this moment? Like could it wait until the morning? Also, because I'm in the relationship business, I would actually say you are too, although you're in the finance business, but it's a lot relationship development.
Oh yeah.
Like, you have to assess your client and customer as to like, do they want an answer right now? Like, is this, and I don't have time to get into this topic, and I don't want to turn off any of your listeners who are your current clients, but I have to say this properly. It's like, if I were in your shoes, I would just hope I'd give you the grace to go like, hey, he doesn't have to answer this email tonight. That's just me, and I only say, because I've lived on the side of people who want my attention right away. And I think to myself, like, let you have a life. It can wait till tomorrow morning. And oh, by the way, the markets are closed anyway. So what are you going to do? I mean, I don't even know how to unpack this topic, and it's too big. But
no, I like this. I like where this is going. I think to humanize the work that we do, it's everything I do is very relationship based too. And a different conversation that I'm recalling earlier this week is Megan and I were talking about different aspects of how we can create operational efficiencies. So a lot about like what you're talking, not that we went in the weeds, but like some productivity things you guys do and drip campaigns and that type of stuff. And the comment she made was like, I'm afraid that removes the humanized side of what we do. And I said, I agree, but with the exception of, if it gives us time back to focus more on the human relationship, if it gives us time back to do the thing that we like doing, which is having these relationships with people, then it's worth it. And to the point that you're making, I think we have a lot of great working relationships with folks that we work, and they understand that we have a family. Like they understand that we have a life. And most of the time, if it comes after hours, I will get a little disclaimer from the client, like, hey, just when you get to this, or like tomorrow. For me though, on the flip side of that, even if I get it, like I'm just crazy about replying to things. Like I at least want the acknowledgement, because that's what I would want if I'm the customer or the client. Like I at least would want the acknowledgement of like, hey, got it. Don't have the answer in front of me, but we're going to look into this and we'll get back to you tomorrow. That goes so far in like building that connection with people. And we have a private like client only text line. And we have to do that for security reasons and for, you know, we're monitored and regulated by the SEC and by FINRA. And so like all of our communications have to be monitored. Right. And so we have this like company we use that allows us to text back and forth. It's like a web browser or a phone app. And the same, like there's a perceived sense of urgency on a text versus an email. Like if someone texts you, not maybe you have a perceived sense of urgency, but like if I sent you an email, Patrick, there's this sort of underlying knowledge, like within 24 hours, maybe by the end of the day. But if I send you a text, like we're always connected to our phones. So you know I saw it. So you're expecting a reply maybe faster. And so we're even faster on text, like just that acknowledgement piece. Like, hey, got your email, got your text. We're looking into it. We'll get back to you soon. I feel like that just goes such a far way in this virtual world that we live in. So I know I went off on a tangent there, and I want to circle back actually to a question. We probably have a few more minutes before we wrap up our show. I want to be respectful of your time, and we're recording another podcast after. We're going back-to-back podcasts, which is I've never done that. Have you ever done that? 2 podcasts in one session?
It's BOGO day.
BOGO day. So a couple years ago, you were on our show and we shared your journey, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, about touring the United States, you know, getting in your car, pulling some of your stuff in like a fifth wheel and just driving around the country. How did that affect your ability? I mean, there's a lot of trust in your team at that point, I suppose. You're really empowering them to say, hey, I'm still going to be available, but like I'm checking in periodically, not working at the level that you were in that season of life, right? What did that look like?
Yeah, so as you already know, because you're a good friend and we talked about it, but a short version was we have COVID. We already work remote. My kid's really young. They're not really deeply involved in school and sports. We think about, let's travel this summer. Then all of a sudden, it's like you start looking through logistics. You're like, that could be hard. Why don't we go 6 months? You know, well, maybe we can rent out our homes and make some income off of it. And, you know, we're trying to figure out the strategy behind this. That evolved itself to like 1 year. Well, 1 year is a big task to take on. And I won't get into all the details of how I made the decision making, but like, you know, and I knew I had to work, just could be work wherever I wanted to. So ultimately, what it came down to was, yes, I went down to a part-time status. And 2, there were some days I just was not on at all. As a business owner, you're always just checking in anyway. So it kind of came early mornings, late evenings. I'm just like bookends of the day, checking on things, communicating, getting back to people. And then there were some days that I really was just like deep in the work, right? Wherever we were at that time, I would just be available in the same schedule I would be now. As I mentioned earlier, I hope someone logs on and the background is a beautiful mountain or ocean. And I had some of those days for probably almost 11 months. And so, yeah, that was also for me, like a really stretching moment. Like it's kind of like, it's like pulled the rubber band quite a bit because I'm like, okay, I've got to be really, really fine tuned in my availability and how I'm doing things. And, you know, I would say I did it above average, not great. And I learned a lot from it, but you know, I'm kind of itching to do it again, to be honest with you. We just,
I didn't know that about you. We haven't talked about this yet.
Well, we're itching
breaking news on the podcast.
Something similar. It's weird. Is as now my kids are 10, 7. Now they're deep into school. Now they're deep into sports. Like we got back to life, and it's like we're as deeply ingrained with the roots as anybody else that you see in middle class America. But we keep having conversations of let's go do it for a few months. And I think we might. It's easy to do in the summer, so we might just do another test run next summer.
That's exciting. I think this is a micro example of that. But later this summer, we're going to be gone, not quite a month, but let's say maybe like 3 weeks. We'll be at the beach, and though there's no in-office meetings, I'll be working remotely. And that again is like a testament to like the comment you made earlier with your staff. Like, I hope to see the beach in the background. I hope to see some cool stuff in the background. Like that's the benefit of working remote. It is kind of cool. Fast forward, as I shared earlier, maybe I had a little bit of shame telling clients at first that we were working remote or what have you. I know I'm going to log into Zooms with a cool background when we're there. And like our clients are going to be like, that's exciting. Like that's super cool for you that you're able to do that. And, you know, again, it's a testament to doing to doing remote work. And again, for me, I like the flex and the option of being able to do both. Patrick, you're full on remote at this point. As we're wrapping up the show, I have a final question. This is you do some like more fun questions at the end of your podcast, which can we advertise that for a second? So the Class Athlete podcast, you're how many episodes in?
Let's see. Well, you and I are going to record the 12th episode here afterwards.
Awesome. Can we share with everybody what that is a little bit?
So the short version is that there is a league here in town where we live, where it's Winter Springs-ish area. I'd say it covers about 4 cities around the area. It's called Class Athlete. Very well established, probably 15 to 20 years. Roy Bova is the owner and founder. He's well known. If I meet anybody whose kids played youth sports, I say Class Athlete, they've become a friend of Roy's. I mean, just yesterday I saw a guy. It's like, oh, Roy's great. He's got a great reputation. He had told me through conversation, we've been friends for about 10 years. He's always wanted to start a podcast to be interesting to him. And I told him, well, I'm looking for a project, and I'm also coaching some youth sports right now with my son. And it's been really intriguing to get into it and learn some things and see some of the stuff that hasn't changed. I said, I need a fun project. Let's do this together. And so we started that about 2 months ago. Our intent is basically, it's very generalized, but it's to enhance the experience for everyone involved in youth sports. And I say enhance in a positive way. Obviously, the children are the main focus, but we got to enhance it for the parents, the coaches, the refs, the families around, and bring some more awareness to the idea of like, what are we trying to accomplish? So we have been attacking it from every angle. We have talked to refs, coaches, parents, former players, now college players. We talked to an athletic director of a private high school in Sarasota named Carlo Mooney. And actually this week we produced a podcast where we talked about the status of NIL deals in the state of Florida, which is actually going through some legislation in July. John, you're probably going to cause me to lose the small listener base we have, because in a few minutes, we're going to basically hit everybody with the idea of like, how much money you really spending on sports and how do you make decisions around it? So I'm going to beg everyone at the beginning of the podcast, please don't unsubscribe. I know it's a small group and growing, but like, don't hate us after this one. So I have to preface that as we get on there, but it's such a great topic to talk about. But it's been a lot of fun. Roy and I have enjoyed it.
Nobody likes the guy that's going to come in and tell them they need to like assess their spending and do a budget for how much they're contributing to their child's athletic interests. But yeah, I'm excited about it. And actually, if you're cool with it, what we'll do, we're gonna reshare it on our show. So we'll basically have it out there double so people can listen to it and get to know your podcast a little bit better. Okay, final question for you. And I think where I was getting at with, I very much trailed off, but you ask like fun questions at the end of your podcast. This isn't a fun one, but it's very in line with our conversation. What is your number one favorite tool that helps you maximize work from home productivity?
That's a really good question. And I'm thinking because I've got a couple that I like. Okay.
You can share 2.
No. So selfishly, it's Calendly, because one of my pet peeves is the banter back and forth of, when are you available? Oh, you're not? Okay. How about tomorrow? Oh, no. How about like later in the morning? Oh, okay. You got to pick up your kids. Dude, I can't stand that. Like, I cannot stand that. So Calendly might be my number one. My number 2 right now is this Tactic. I think it's spelled TACTIQ, Tactic software, which is the auto-generated notes. We also use Ring Central as our voice over IP for our phone calls. They have integrated their own as well. You have to press a button. Every phone call, you get an email sent to you of all the conversation that just happened.
That's really cool. I did not know they did. We use Ring Central also, and I did not know that they have that. And we use a different. We've started the note taking thing too, so we can share some ideas on that. It's a different company, but it delivers the same idea. With Calendly though, how have you mastered the art of perfecting? Here's my Calendly link without sounding like you're blowing them off or you're kind of a jerk about it, because I feel that pressure. I'm not saying that you are that way, by the way, but I feel that pressure when a client's like, hey, can we schedule some time? And I'm like, in an effort to avoid the back and forth, here's my link. And then I sort of go like, P.S. if you don't find a time on here, reach out to my team. We'll figure something out. That's like my way of making them feel.
Years ago, someone said the acronym to me called WIFM. WIFM. What's in it for me? Everyone always is thinking WIFM. What's in it for me? So when I say a phrase, I often have to think, well, I have to establish what's in it for them. So my common thing is, hey, here's a link to my calendar. Find a time that is best for you, like you said, that works best for you, and let me know. And if you don't find one, just reach out to me and suggest times, and I'll try to make some accommodations, which is basically me saying, let me make this easier. Because you've probably heard this before, but like removing friction from everything is really what we're in the business of right now. It's how do we make this like frictionless for our customer, our client, the people we work with, our employees. And I think Calendly is a less friction method. I hope everyone sees it that way, but it's like, to me, I think it is. But I'm a constant. It's one of my hums in the back of my head all the time. It's like, where is there friction? How do I remove it?
I would agree with you. Most people do probably see it that way. Maybe there's an outlier of someone that feels slighted as a result of getting it. These are all, I could do an entire podcast series on my fears of alienating the clients we work with, because we do care so much about our client community. And like when we started using Calendly, the thought was there's going to feel like a loss of that humanized element that Megan and I were talking, that I shared earlier, that Megan and I talked about earlier this week, is like you lose that human interaction to even schedule. But what we learned very quickly, because I was soliciting feedback in real time for like 6 months, and every single person mostly said, it's so much better, John, because it was frustrating, like, because you're coordinating a husband and wife's calendar, and they're at work when you send it, you call them or you send them the email because you're working 9 to 5. And so they're like, you know what, I'll talk to my spouse when I get home tonight. They talk about it, they forget about it, they don't remember the date. Like there's just that it would take so much friction, as you said, to get it scheduled, versus like, here's a link, take a look when you get a chance. And like, it's dynamic and it's moving in real time. But if you see it available at that moment, scoop it up, put your name in, enter, and it's that time slot's yours. It was a relieving feeling to get feedback from people that appreciated it. Of course, there's some that maybe don't, but my thing is like, I always add the PS, like PS, if you don't find a time, which you do the same thing, basically you say the same thing. So that's pretty cool.
Like I said, we're 4 years into this remote, or at least this heavy technology type scenario. Not just us, but everyone's had to adapt. I do think you send a Calendly to somebody today and they go, oh, this is cool. And I'm kind of used to these things. I don't know if you would use this, but in Outlook, if you use Outlook, we have the Calendly plugin within the Outlook, and you can actually drag and drop small sections of time. If you just want to say, hey, here's a few slots for today. You want to try any of these? And you can actually insert that into the body of the email, and they just click and pick. So instead of like doing the entire calendar and go from there, if you want to make it a little more personal, you can do that.
Personalized automation. That's what we could do. We could do a whole nother podcast about that. Well, hopefully you'll come back as a 3-time repeat guest to our show.
Have you had any 3-timers?
Well, yes, but they're internal. So like Michael Scott, everyone knows he's been on the show a bunch. Rain has been on the show a bunch. So, but it's only been internal. No 3-timers outside of Canterpath Financial. So you could be the first if you're up for it.
I'm down for that. I'm
cool.
not up for it. I'm down for it.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you hanging with us today. So, hey, everyone, as always, thanks for listening to our show or watching us if you're watching us on YouTube. And thank you, Patrick, for being on this episode with me ×2 and hopefully ×3 again in the future. If you'd like more clips or highlights from today's podcast or any other episode for that matter, head over to the aboveboardpodcast.com and check us out. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us today. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.